So a quick definition of mastering is the step in the audio production process that comes after mixing and before replication. A lot of people will call it a bridge, and I think that's how it's mentioned in the outline, a bridge between mixing and replication. Some people will ask, well, why do I need that step in there? And I'm going to cover all those points tonight. I find that for 85–90% of the jobs that come through, they really do need the help of the mastering process. You can certainly get away sometimes with your mix coming straight out of the studio and going right to replication if everything is perfect, the planets have aligned, and you've got your levels good, your balance between songs is great. It does happen. We get projects that come in, people want us to listen to it and give us feedback on them. Sometimes we just say, hey, it sounds great, it's ready to go. But really the bulk, 85–90% of jobs that come through do need some sort of mastering. Might be subtle stuff. Sometimes it's really drastic, but it definitely gives it that little boost and takes it to the next level. The mastering process I would define as having two areas. One's a creative area, and that's where we actually deal with changing the audio, enhancing, making it better. We'll concentrate mainly on tonal balance of the songs. It's not mixing, so we're not raising and lowering individual instruments like you are in the studio where you have a fader for your vocals, and if you want your vocals louder you can just boost them up. So we're working with broader strokes with the EQ. We can certainly lift the vocals out of a mix a little bit, if that's required, but it's not surgical like it is when you have a mixing console with all those faders on there. Again, I mentioned earlier, that's one of the things that sometimes people come in and they'll actually refer to the mastering as mixing. I have people come in and say, oh yeah, when you're mixing it, can you pay attention to the guitars? And I don't know if they're just using the wrong term or if they actually do think that we have control over all the separate channels. I'm led to believe over the years that a lot of people do think we can actually pick apart all the audio in there and just lift out certain things. So we just basically, like I said, work in broad strokes. The EQ can tone down the bass a little bit, brighten up a dull mix, things like that, but it's not the surgical pinpoint stuff like in mixing. One of the other things, the creative part of it is really important, is the tonal balance not only of each song, making sure each song has enough bass and high end and one isn't overpowering the other, but also listening to each song compared to the other songs on the CD. Generally, that's how it differs from mixing a lot. Mixing, you'll spend tons of time on each song, getting the balance of the instruments right. You may spend 3 days mixing one song, and you're just concentrating on that one song. And generally, when you get done, you put that one to sleep, and you're moving on to your next one. If you don't then go back at some point and listen to that first song you mixed compared to the last song you mixed, well, generally you're going to find that you have differences when you get your disc back from replication. So the mastering engineer will listen to that first track, get his tone right, but then also compare the last track, the middle track, all the tracks to make sure there's a nice continuous flow from beginning to end. The first song isn't crushed with bass. Second song has no bass and is really weak sounding. You want everything to be fairly even to a certain point. Certainly if the music is something that's real dynamic and the songs are all different orchestrations and change a lot, then we're not going to strive to make everything completely the same. But most albums, you want it to be a nice listen from beginning to end and not have dips and level and too much bass on certain songs. One of the other things that we can do in mastering that I work on a lot, because a lot of the projects that I get are from project studios with less than ideal recording conditions, we can remove noises, hiss, distortion, glitches, pops, to a certain extent. We don't really have magic processes to take all that stuff out, But if you have digital glitches in the middle of your song that occurred in the studio for whatever reason, some piece of gear was acting up that day, you got a glitch from your workstation and you didn't catch it, we generally are going to catch that kind of stuff. That's what we're listening for. We want to go over everything with a fine-tooth comb because we know this is the final step. We're kind of the filter between, mixing and replication. If it gets through us, then it's going to get pressed up into 1,000 CDs. So we're looking for those little abnormalities and things that should be removed. And we have some pretty powerful tools that will do that. I hear a lot of jobs that have hiss. In the quiet passages of a song, there's a lot of background hiss in there. It could come from your guitar amp. It could come from a processor that's kind of noisy. If you don't catch that in the studio, the mastering engineer a lot of times will definitely hear that because of our listening environment. And if they have the right tools at their disposal, they can take that out. And that can make a big difference in making your recording sound like it was done in a project studio with all its associated, problems, or a more professional recording that's nice and clean.